exactly like children who do not know anything but the protection of their parents. The demigod Varuna received Lord Krishna and Balarama with great respect and said, "My dear Lord, actually at this very moment, because of your presence, my life as the demigod Varuna has become successful. Although I am the proprietor of all the treasurers in the water, I know that such possessions do not make for a successful life. But at this moment, as I look at you, my life is made completely successful because by seeing you, I no longer have to accept a material body. Therefore, O Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Supreme Brahman, and Super Soul of everything, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the Supreme Transcendental Personality. There is no possibility of imposing the influence of material nature upon you. I am very sorry that my foolish man, but not knowing what to do or what not to do, has mistakenly arrested your father Nanda Maharaja. So I beg your pardon for the offense of my servant. I think that it was your plan to show me your mercy by your personal presence here. My dear Lord Krishna, Govinda, be merciful upon me. Here is your father. You can take him back immediately."
In this way, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rescued his father and presented him before his friends, bringing them great jubilation. Nanda Maharaj was surprised that although the demigod was so opulent, he offered such respect to Krishna. That was very astonishing to Nanda, and he began to describe the incident to his friends and relatives with great wonder. Actually, although Krishna was acting so wonderfully, Maharaj Nanda and Mother Yashoda could not think of him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead, they always accepted him as their beloved child. Thus, Nanda Maharaj did not accept the fact that Varuna worshipped Krishna because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he took it that because Krishna was such a wonderful child, he was respected even by Varuna. The friends of Nanda Maharaj, all the cowherd men, became eager to know if Krishna was actually the Supreme Personality and if he was going to give them all salvation. When they were all thus consulting among themselves, Krishna understood their minds, and in order to assure them of their destiny in the spiritual kingdom, he showed them the spiritual sky. Generally, ordinary persons are engaged simply in working hard in the material world, and they have no information that there is another kingdom or another sky, which is known as the spiritual sky, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, a person returning to that spiritual sky never returns to this material world of death and suffering.
Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always eager to give information to the conditioned soul that there is a spiritual sky, far, far beyond this material sky, transcendental to the innumerable universes created within the total material energy. Krishna is, of course, always very kind to every conditioned soul, but as stated in Bhagavad Gita, he is especially inclined to the pure devotees. Hearing their inquiries, Krishna immediately thought that his devotees in Vrindavan should be informed of the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha planet therein.
Within the material world, every conditioned soul is in the darkness of ignorance. This means that all conditioned souls are under the concept of bodily existence. everyone is under the impression that he is of this material world. And with this concept of life, everyone is working in ignorance in different forms of life. The activities of the particular type of body are called karma, or fruitive action. All conditioned souls, being under the impression of the bodily concept, are working according to their particular type of body. These activities are creating their future conditioned life because they have very little information of the spiritual world. They do not generally take to spiritual activities, which are called bhakti yoga. Those who successfully practice bhakti yoga go directly to the spiritual world after giving up this present body, and there they become situated in one of the Vaikuntha planets. The inhabitants of Vrindavan are all pure devotees. Their destination after quitting the body is Krishna Loka. They even surpass the Vaikuntha Lokas. The fact is that those who are always engaged in Krishna consciousness and mature pure devotional service are given the chance after death to attain Krishna's association in one of the universes within the material world.
Krishna's pastimes are constantly going on, either in this universe or in other universe, just as the sun global is passing over many places across this earthly planet. So Krishna Leela, or the transcendental advent and the pastime of Krishna, are always going on constantly, either in this or another universe. The mature devotee who have completely executed Krishna consciousness are immediately transferred to the universe where Krishna is appearing. In that universe, the devotee gets their first opportunity to associate with Krishna personally and directly. The transmission goes on as the training goes on, as we see in the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna within this planet. Krishna therefore elevates the actual features of the Vaikuntha planet so that the inhabitants of Vrindavan could know their distinction.
Thus, Krishna showed them the eternal, ever-existing spiritual sky, which is unlimited and full of knowledge. Within this material world, there are different grades of forms, and according to the grade, knowledge is proportionately manifested. For example, the knowledge in the body of a child is not as perfect as the knowledge in the body of an adult man. Everywhere there are different grades of living entities, in aquatic animals, in the plants and trees, in the reptiles and insects, in birds and beasts, and in the civilized and uncivilized human forms of life. Above the human form of life, there are demigods, charanas and siddhas on up to the Brahmaloka, where Lord Brahma lives, and among these demigods there are always different grades of knowledge. But beyond this material world, in this spiritual sky, everyone is in full knowledge, and therefore all the living entities there are engaged in devotional service to the Lord, either in the Vaikuntha planets or in Krishna Loka.
As it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, full knowledge means knowing Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that the Brahma Jyoti or spiritual sky, there is no need of sunlight, moonlight or electricity. All the planets there are self-illuminating, and all of them are eternally situated. there is no question of creation and annihilation in the Brahma Jyoti or spiritual sky. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms that beyond the material sky there is another eternal spiritual sky where everything is eternally existing. Direct knowledge of the spiritual sky can be had only by the great sages and saintly persons who have already surpassed the influence of the three material modes of nature by engaging in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Unless one is constantly situated on that transcendental platform, it is not possible to understand the spiritual nature.
Therefore, it is recommended that headed by Nanda Maharaj to the lake where Akrura would later be shown the Vaikuntha planetary system. They took their bath immediately and saw the real nature of the Vaikuntha lokas. After seeing the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha lokas, all the men headed by Nanda Maharaj felt wonderfully blissful, and upon coming out of the lake, they saw Krishna, who was being worshipped with excellent prayers. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 28th chapter of Krishna, releasing Nanda Maharaja from the clutches of Varuna.
Haribo. Haribo. So now, Srila Prabhupada, we're reading chapter 29, the Rasa Dance, Introduction. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the Rasa Dance took place on the full moon night of the Sarat season. From the statements of previous chapters, it appears that the festival of Govardhan Puja was performed just after the dark moon night of the month of Kartik, and thereafter the ceremony of Bharat Dwitya was performed. Then the wrath of Indra was exhibited in the shape of torrents of rain and hailstones, and Lord Krishna held up Govardhan Hill for 7 days until the 9th day of the moon. On the next day, Dwadasi, Nanda Maharaj went to take a bath in the Ganges and was arrested by one of the men of Varuna. Then he was released by Lord Krishna. Then Nanda Maharaj, along with the cowherd men, was shown the spiritual sky.
In this way, the full night of Sharat season came to an end. The full moon night of Aswina is called Sharat Purnima. It appears from the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna had to wait another year for such a moon before enjoying the rasa dance with the gopis. At the age of 7 years, he lifted Govardhan Hill. Therefore, the rasa dance took place during his 8th year. From the Vedic literature, it appears that when a theatrical actor dances among many dancing girls, the group of dance is called a rasa dance. When Krishna saw the full moon night of the Sharat season decorated with various seasonal flowers, especially the Malika flower, which are very frequent, he remembered the gopis' prayers to the goddess Kathyani, wherein they prayed for Krishna to be their husband. He thought that the full moon night of the Sharat season was just suitable for a nice dance, so their desire to have Krishna as their husband would be then fulfilled.
The words used in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam are Bhagavan Api. This means that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus has no desire that needs to be fulfilled, because he is always full with six opulences, he still wanted to enjoy the company of the gopis in the rasa dance. Bhagavan Api signifies that this dance is not like the ordinary dancing of young boys and young girls. The specific words used in Srimad Bhagavatam are Yoga Mayam Upasrita, which mean that this dancing with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya or not Mahamaya. The dancing of young boys and girls within the material world is in the kingdom of Mahamaya or the external energy. The rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya. The difference between the platforms of Yogamaya and Mahamaya is compared in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to the difference between gold and iron. From the viewpoint of metallurgy, gold and iron are both metals, but the quality is completely different. Similarly, although the rasa dance and Krishna's association with the gopis appear like the ordinary mixing of young boys and girls, the quality is completely different. The difference is appreciated by great Vaishnavas because they can understand the difference between love of Krishna and lust.
On the Mahamaya platform, dance takes place on the basis of sense gratification. But when Krishna called the gopis by sounding his flute, they very hurriedly rushed towards the spot of the rasa dance with the transcendental desire to satisfy Krishna. The author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami, has explained that lust means sense gratification and love means sense gratification. But for Krishna, in other words, when activities are enacted on the platform of personal sense gratification, they are called material activities. But when they are enacted from the satisfaction of Krishna, they are spiritual activities. On any platform of activities, the principle of sense gratification is there. But on the spiritual platform, sense gratification is for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Whereas on the material platform, it is for the performer. For example, on the material platform, when a servant serves a master, he is trying to satisfy not the senses of his master, but rather if the payment stopped. That means the servant engages himself in the service of the master just to satisfy his own senses. On the spiritual platform, however, the servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serves Krishna without payment, and he continues his service in all conditions. That is the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness.
As mentioned above, it appears that Krishna enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis when he was 8 years old. At that time, many of the gopis were married, because in India, especially in those days, girls were married at a very early age. There are even many instances of a girl giving birth to a child at the age of 12. Under the circumstances, all the gopis who wanted to have Krishna as their husband were already married. At the same time, they continued to hope that Krishna would be their husband. Their attitude towards Krishna was that of a paramour love. Therefore, the loving affairs of Krishna with the gopis are called Parakiya Rasa. The attitude of a married man who desires another wife or a wife who desires another husband is called Parakiya Rasa.
Actually, Krishna is the husband of everyone because he is the supreme enjoyer. The gopis wanted Krishna to be their husband, but factually there was no possibility of his marrying all the gopis. But because they had that natural tendency to accept Krishna as their supreme husband, the relationship between the gopis and Krishna is called Parakya Ras. This Parakya Ras is ever existent in Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual sky, where there is no possibility of the inebriety which characterizes Parakya Ras in the material world. In the material world, Parakya Ras is abominable, whereas in the spiritual world, it is present in the super excellent relationship of Krishna and the gopis. There are many relationships with Krishna, master and servant, friend and friend, parent and son, and lover and beloved. Out of all these rasas, the Parakya Ras is considered to be the topmost.
This material world is private reflection of the spiritual world. It is just like the reflection of a tree on the bank of receiver of the water. The topmost part of the tree is seen as the lowest part. Similarly, the Parika Rasa, when privately reflected in the material world, is the most abnormal. Therefore, when people imitate the Rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy the privated absorbing reflection of the transcendental Parika Rasa. There is no possibility of enjoying the transcendental Parika Rasa within the material world. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one should not imitate this Parika Rasa even in dream or imagination. Those who do so drink the most deadly poison.
When Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, decided to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sarat season, exactly at that very moment the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying its most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sarat season is the most beautiful night in the year. In the Indian city of Agra, the Uttar Pradesh province, there is a great monument called the Taj Mahal, which is a tomb made of first-class marble stone. During the night of the full moon of the Sarat season, many foreigners go to see the beautiful reflections of the moon on the tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated even today for its beauty.
When the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kunkuma. When a husband long separated from his wife returns home, he decorates the face of his wife with red kunkuma. This long expected moonrise of the Sharat season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. When Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon, the red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers. All the gopis were by nature very much attracted to the Krishna's beauty, and when they heard the vibration of his flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna.
Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran very swiftly, the earrings swung back and forth. They all rushed towards the place known as Manshivat. Some of them were engaged in the milking cows, but they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and put it in the milk pan on the stove to boil, but she didn't care whether the milk overboiled and spilled. She immediately left to go to see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families. But they left all such engagements and immediately rushed towards the spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some were engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating. But caring neither to serve their husbands nor eat, they immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with cosmetics ointments and to dress themselves very nicely before going to Krishna. But unfortunately, they couldn't finish their cosmetic decorations or put on their clothes in the right way because of their anxiety to meet Krishna immediately. Their faces were decorated hurriedly and were haphazardly finished. Some even put the low part of the clothes on the upper part of their bodies and the upper part on the low part.
There's a beautiful picture here. If the cameraman can come in close. It's a beautiful picture of the Rasa dance that our Bhaktivedanta Book Trust artists painted so nicely. Do we have a close-up picture of that? Wonderful. Take the time in your Krishna books to look at these beautiful paintings of the spiritual world. While all the gopis were hurriedly leaving their respective places, their husbands, brothers, and fathers were all struck with wonder to know where they were going. Being young girls, they were protected either by husbands, elder brothers, or fathers. All their guardians forbade them to go to Krishna, but they disregarded them. When a person becomes attracted by Krishna and is in full Krishna consciousness, he does not care for any worldly duties, even though very urgent. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it gives everyone relief from all material activities. Srila Rupa Goswami has written a very nice verse wherein one gopi advises another, "My dear friend, if you desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship, and love, then please do not go see that smiling boy Govinda who is standing on the bank of the Jamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight." Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by the beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. This is the test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person advancing in Krishna consciousness must lose interest in material activities and personal sense gratification.
Some of the gopis were actually detained from going to Krishna by their husband and were locked up by force within their rooms. Being unable to go to Krishna, they began to meditate upon his transcendental form. By closing their eyes, they already had the form of Krishna within their mind. They proved to be the greatest yogis, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita. A person who is constantly thinking of Krishna within his heart with faith and love is considered to be the topmost of all yogis. Actually, a yogi concentrates his mind on the form of Lord Vishnu. That is the real yoga. Krishna is the original form of all Vishnu Tattva. The gopis who could not go to Krishna personally began to meditate on him as perfect yogis.
In the conditional stage of living entities, there are two kinds of results of fruitive activities. the conditioned living entity who is constantly engaged in sinful activities has suffering as his result, and he who is engaged in pious activities has material enjoyment as a result. In either case, material suffering or material enjoyment, the sufferer, the enjoyer, is conditioned by material nature.
The Gopi associates of Krishna who assembled in the place where Krishna was appearing were from different groups. Most of the gopis were eternal companions of Krishna. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavi. In the spiritual world, the associates of Krishna, especially the gopis, are manifestation of the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. They are expansion of Srimati Radharani. But when Krishna exhibits his transcendental pastimes within the material world in some of the universes, not only the eternal associates of Krishna come, but also those who are being promoted to that status from this material world. So some of the gopis who joined Krishna's pastimes within this material world were coming from the status of ordinary human beings. If they had been bound by fruitive action, they were fully freed from the reactions of karma by constant meditation on Krishna. Their severely painful yearnings caused by their not being able to see Krishna freed them from all sinful reactions, and their ecstasy of transcendental love for Krishna in his absence ended all their reactions to material pious activities. The conditioned soul is subjected to birth and death, either by pious or sinful activities. But the gopis who began to meditate on Krishna transcended both positions and became purified, and thus elevated to the status of the gopis already expanded by his pleasure potency. All the gopis who concentrated their minds on Krishna in the spirit of paramour love became fully purified of all the fruitive reactions of material nature, and some of them immediately gave up their material bodies developed under the three modes of material nature.
Maharaj Parikshit heard Shukadev Goswami explain the situation of the gopis who assembled with Krishna in the rasa dance. When he heard that some of the gopis, simply by concentrating on Krishna as their paramour, became freed from all contamination of material birth and death, he said, the gopis didn't know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They accepted him as a beautiful boy and considered him to be their paramour. So how was it possible for them to get free from the material condition just by thinking of a paramour? One should consider here that Krishna and ordinary living beings are qualitatively one. The ordinary living beings, being part and parcel of Krishna, are also Brahman. But Krishna is the Supreme Parabrahma. The question is, if it is possible for a devotee to get free from the material contaminated stage simply by thinking of Krishna, then why should this not be possible for others who are also thinking of someone? If one is thinking of a husband or a son, or if anyone at all is thinking of another living entity, then since all the living entities are also Brahman, why are all those who thus think of others not freed from the contaminated stage of material nature? This is a very intelligent question, because there are always atheists imitating Krishna. In these days of Kali Yuga, there are many rascals who think themselves to be as good as Krishna and who cheat people into believing that thinking of them is as good as thinking of Lord Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj, apprehending the future dangerous condition of blind followers of demoniac imitators, therefore asked this question, and fortunately it is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam to warn innocent people that thinking of an ordinary man and thinking of Krishna are not the same.
Actually, even thinking of the demigods cannot compare with thinking of Krishna. It is warned in the Vaishnava Tantra that one who puts Vishnu, Narayan, or Krishna on the same level as the demigods is called a Pashandi or rascal. On hearing this question from Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami replied, "My dear king, your question is already answered even before this incident." Because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to clear up the situation, his spiritual master answered him very intelligently. "Why are you again asking about the same subject matter, which has already been explained to you? Why are you so forgetful?" A spiritual master is always in the superior position, so he has the right to chastise his disciple in this way. Shukadeva Goswami knew that Maharaj Parikshit asked the question not for his own understanding, but as a warning to the future innocent people who might think others to be equal to Krishna.
Sukadeva Goswami then reminded Parikshit Maharaj about the celebration of Shishupal. Shishupal was always envious of Krishna, and because of his envious, Krishna killed him. But since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shishupal gained celebration simply by seeing him. If an envious person can get celebration simply by concentrating his mind on Krishna, then what to speak of the gopis who are so dear to Krishna and always think of him in love? There must be some difference between the enemies and the friends. If Krishna's enemies could not get freed from the material continuation, yes, okay, and become one with the Supreme, then certainly his dear friend like the gopis can achieve such freedom and much more.
Besides that, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is called Rishikesha. Sukadeva Goswami also said that Krishna is Rishikesha, the super soul, whereas an ordinary man is a conditioned soul covered by the material body. Krishna and Krishna's body are the same because he is Rishikesha. Any person making a distinction between Krishna and Krishna's body is fool number one. Krishna is Rishikesha and Adokshada. These two particular words have been used by Sukadeva Goswami in this instance. Rishikesha is the super soul and Adokshada is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental to the material nature. Just to show favor to the ordinary living entities, out of his causeless mercy, he appears as he is. Unfortunately, foolish persons mistake him to be an ordinary person, and so they became eligible to go to hell.
Sukadeva Goswami continued to inform Maharaj Parikshit that Krishna is not an ordinary person, but rather the Supreme Personality of Godhead, imperishable, immeasurable, and without any material qualities, but full of all spiritual qualities. He appears in this material world out of his causeless mercy, and whenever he appears as he is, without change. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says that he appears by his spiritual potency. He does not appear under the control of the material potency. The material potency is under his control. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the material potency is working under his superintendence. It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that the material potency known as Durga is acting just like a shadow, which moves with the movement of the substance. The conclusion is that if one somehow or other becomes attached to Krishna or attracted to him, either because of his qualities of beauty, opulence, fame, strength, renunciation, or knowledge, through affection or friendship, or even through lust, anger, or fear, then one's salvation and freedom from material contamination are assured.
In the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, the Lord states that one who is engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness is very dear to him. A preacher has to face many difficulties in his struggle to preach pure Krishna consciousness. Sometimes he has to suffer bodily injuries, and sometimes he has to meet death. Therefore, death also. All this is taken as a great austerity on behalf of Krishna. Krishna therefore has said that such a preacher is very, very dear to him. If Krishna's enemies can expect salvation simply by concentrating their minds on him, then what to speak of persons who are so dear to Krishna? The conclusion should be that the salvation of those who are engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness in the world is guaranteed in all circumstances. But such preachers never care for salvation, because factually, one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, devotional service, has already achieved salvation. Sukadeva Goswami therefore assured King Parikshit that he should always rest assured that one who is attracted by Krishna attains liberation from material bondage, because Krishna is the transcendental master of all mastic power.
When all the gopis assembled, as described, before Krishna, he began to speak to them, welcoming them as well as discouraging them by word jugglery. Krishna is the supreme speaker. He is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. He can speak on the highest elevated subjects of philosophy, politics, economics, everything. And he also spoke before the gopis, who were so dear to him. He wanted to enchant them by word jugglery, and thus he began to speak as follows. O ladies of Vrindavan, Krishna said, you are very fortunate, and you are very dear to me. I am very much pleased that you have come here, and I hope everything is well in Vrindavan. Now, please order me. What can I do for you? What is the purpose of your coming here in the dead of night? Kindly take your seats and let me know what I can do for you.
The gopis had come to Krishna for enjoying his company, to dance with him, embrace him and kiss him. And when Krishna began to receive them very officially, showing all kinds of etiquette, they were surprised. He has treating them like an ordinary society woman. Therefore they began to smile among themselves and thought they very eagerly listened to Krishna talk in that way. They were surprised. Then Krishna began to instruct them, my dear friends, you must know that it is now the dead of night, and the forest is very dangerous. At this time, all the ferocious jungle animals, the tiger, bears, jackal, and wolves are prowling in the forest. Therefore, it is very dangerous for you, who you cannot select a secure place known now. Everywhere you go, you will find that all these animals are loitering to find their prey. I think therefore that you are taking a great risk in coming here in the dead of night. Please turn your back immediately without delay. When he saw that they continued to smile, he said, I very much appreciate your bodily features, All of you have nice, very thin waist. All of the gopis they were extremely beautiful. They are described by the words Sumudriya. The standard of the beauty of the woman is said to be Sumudriya when the middle portion of the body is slender.
Krishna wanted to impress on them that they were not old enough to take care of themselves. Actually, they required protection. It was not very wise for them to come in the dead of night to Krishna. Krishna also indicated that he was young and that they were young girls. It does not look very well for young girls and boys to remain together in the dead of night. After hearing this advice, the gopis did not seem very happy. Therefore, Krishna began to stress the point in a different way.
My dear friends, I can understand that you have left your homes without the permission of your guardians. Therefore, I think your mothers, your fathers, your elder brothers, and even your sons, and what to speak of your husbands, must be very anxious to find you. As long as you are here, they must be searching in different places and their minds must be very agitated. So don't tarry, please go back and make them peaceful.
When the gopis appeared to be a little bit disturbed and angry from hearing the free advice of Krishna, they diverted their attention to looking at the beauty of the forest. At that time, the whole forest was illuminated by the bright shining of the moon, and the air was blowing very silently over the blooming flowers, and the green leaves of the trees were moving in the breeze. Krishna took the opportunity of their looking at the forest to advise them. I think you have come out to see the beautiful Vrindavan forest on this night, he said, but you must now be satisfied. So return to your homes without delay. I understand that you are all very chaste women. So now that you have seen the beautiful atmosphere of the Vrindavan forest, please return home and engage in the faithful service of your respective husbands. Some of you must have babies by this time. Although you are very young, you must have left your small babies at home and they must be crying. Please immediately go back home and just feed them with your breast milk. I can also understand that you have very great affection for me, and out of that transcendental affection you have come here. Hearing my playing on the flute, your feelings of love and affection for me are very appropriate because I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All living creatures are my parts and parcels, and naturally they are affectionate to me. So this affection for me is very welcome, and I congratulate you for this. Now you can go back home. Now you can go back to your homes. Another thing I must explain to you is that for a chaste woman, service to the husband without duplicity is the base religious principle. Not only should a woman be faithful and chaste to her husband, but she should also be affectionate to the friends of her husband, obedient to the father and mother of her husband, and affectionate to the younger brothers of her husband. And most importantly, a woman must take care of her children.
In this way, Krishna explained the duty of a woman. He also stressed the point of serving the husband. Even if he is not of good character, even if he is not of very good character, or even if he is not very rich or fortunate, or even if he is old or invalid on account of continued diseases, whatever her husband's condition, a woman should not divorce her husband, if she actually desires to be elevated to the higher planetary systems after leaving this body. Besides that, it is considered abominable in society if a woman is unfaithful and goes searching for another man. Such habits will deter a woman from being elevated to the heavenly planets, and the results of such habits are very degrading. A married woman should not search for a paramour, for this is not sanctioned by the Vedic principles of life. If you think that you are very much attached to me and you want my association, I advise you not to personally try to enjoy me. It is better for you to go home. Simply talk about me and think of me. And by this process of constantly remembering me and chanting my names, you will surely be elevated to the spiritual platform. There is no need to stand near me. Please go back home.
The instruction given here by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the gopis was not at all scarcity. Such instruction should be taken very seriously by all honest women. The chastise of the woman is specially stressed herein by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this principle should be followed by any serious woman who want to be elevated to the highest status of life. Krishna is the center of all affection for all living creatures. When this affection is developed for Krishna, one surpasses the transcendent all Vedic injection. This was possible for the gopis because they saw Krishna face to face. This is not possible for everyone, for any woman in the conditioned state. Unfortunately, sometimes a rascal, following the philosophy of the monism or oneness, very irresponsibly takes the advantage of this Rasa Leela to imitate the behavior of Krishna with the gopis, and many innocent women are misled them in the name of the spiritual realization. As a warning, Lord Krishna has herein hinted that what was possible for the gopis is not possible for the ordinary woman. Although a woman can actually be elevated by advanced Krishna consciousness, she should not be entrapped by the impostor who says that he is Krishna. She should concentrate her devotional activities in chanting about Krishna and meditating upon him. As is advised here, one should not follow the men called sages, the so-called devotees, who take everything very lightly.
When Krishna spoke in such a discouraging way to the gopis, they became very sad, for they thought that their desire to enjoy the rasa dance with Krishna would be frustrated. Thus they became full of anxiety. Out of great sadness, the gopis began to breathe very heavily. Instead of looking at Krishna face to face, they bowed their heads and looked at the ground, and they began to draw various types of curved lines on the ground with their toes. They were shedding heavy tears, and their cosmetic decorations were being washed from their faces. The water from their eyes mixed with the kunguma on the breasts and fell to the ground. They could not say anything to Krishna, but simply stood there silently. By their silence, they expressed their hearts were grievously wounded.
The gopis were not ordinary women. In essence, they were on an equal level with Krishna. They are his eternal associates. As it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, they are expansions of the pleasure potency of Krishna, and his potency, they are non-different from him, although they were depressed by the words of Krishna. They did not like to use harsh words against him. Yet they wanted to rebuke Krishna for his unkind words, and therefore they began to speak in flattering voices. They did not like to use harsh words against Krishna because he was their dearmost, their heart and soul. The gopis had only Krishna within their hearts. They were completely surrendered and dedicated souls. Naturally, when they heard such unkind words, they tried to reply, but in the attempt, torrents of tears fell from their eyes. Finally, they managed to speak.
Great expression.
Krishna, they said, "You are very cruel. You should not talk like that. We are full-fledged, surrendered souls. Please accept us and don't talk in that cruel way. Of course, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can do whatever you like, but it is not worthy of your position to treat us in such a cruel way. We have come to you, leaving everything behind, just to take shelter of your lotus feet. We know that you are completely independent and can do whatever you like, but we request you, don't reject us. We are your devotees. You should accept us as Lord Narayana accepts his devotees. There are many devotees of Lord Narayana who worship him for salvation and he awards them salvation. Similarly, how can you reject us when we have no shelter other than your lotus feet?"
So this concludes our 1 hour of reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, thank you very much for letting us do this service for you. And as always, let us end with offering our humble obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Deshatarane Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we'll continue next week with the Rasa dance introduction. Hare Krishna, Jai Krishna Books.
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.